Pass it on to Greg, who is our farmer.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. I guess I've been elected to kick the evening off and welcome you all. So welcome to our forum, Food for All, Challenges and Opportunities for Feeding Everyone in Our Community. This is part of our series on environmental issues, climate change, and food justice that is made possible by the BARD, so thank you very much. When we were sitting down to plan this year's forum, we were thinking about what we wanted to do and who we wanted to invite, and I thought about the issue of food access and farms like Newton Community Farm being able to feed not just the affluent, but everyone in our community. And I thought this would be a great topic. It's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. When I started farming at Newton Community Farm 19 years ago, we had no refrigeration, and so at the end of our CSAs or our farm stand and the farmer's market, we had produce that if we didn't do something with, it was going to go bad. And so I started taking it to the Newton Food Pantry, which at that time was in City Hall.
Still is. Still is.
And I was appalled. I was really shocked because when I got there, it was the only produce in the food pantry. Everything else was shelf-stable products because they had no refrigeration at City Hall. And so I'm really proud that we've been continuing to deliver almost every week to the Newton Food Pantry for the last 19 years, because I really do feel like farms like ours need to make sure that everyone has access to food. I met Glynn, I don't know how many years ago now, probably like 10 years ago. Glynn was recruiting me to the board of the Urban Farming Institute in Mattapan, and we were trying to figure out whether it was actually possible to have small-scale urban agriculture as a viable business model. And here we are 20 years later, we are still doing it, and we're still not only able to do it financially viably, but we're able to do it in a way that we can be donating produce every single week to our local food pantry. And then the third member of our panel, Usha Thakrar from the Gleaners. When I started farming, we would call the Gleaners, we would call Oaks Plimpton, who started the Gleaners at Waltham Fields Community Farm, what is now Waltham Fields Community Farm. And Oaks just would send out a call to a bunch of volunteers, and a bunch of people would show up and they would pick whatever crops we had left over, and that would be taken to, back to Waltham and then distributed to the Greater Boston Food Bank. So this panel means a lot to me because it's all these pieces of my past as a farmer and all these really profound and important institutions in our community. So I'd like to thank our panelists, and I'd like to thank you all for coming. And my hope for the evening is that we can explore the challenges that face us as we try and make sure that food is available for everyone in our community. But we need hope. And so we're going to turn, after talking about the challenges, to look at some of the opportunities some of the novel opportunities that are available to making sure that everyone has access to fresh local produce, and how local farms can work with organizations like the Gleaners and Boston Food Bank to provide produce to everyone. Thank you.
Great. Hi, I am Kristina Pechulis, and I'm moderating today. I am the executive director of the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative. We are a policy organization. We do statewide policy for food, policy to try to get everybody to have equal access and sustainable food systems. I come to this work as a mother of 2 children, and I believe that food is medicine for their bodies and a source of community, and so I use my advocacy to make policy change so we can have farmland and we can have local food, and our children learn about food in schools. So that's kind of where I come from. And I am excited, and you already did all my intros, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask everybody to kind of give like a brief description of the work that your organization does. We'll just start here and we'll work our way over.
Sure.
I have some here.
That's helpful. So yeah, as I was introduced by Greg, Glenn, Lloyd, and my main job today is moving capital. So I run a community development finance institution called Nectar Community Investments, and we're lending to a lot of small businesses focused on the racial wealth gap. And we also lend to homeowners. We have some green products so we can get folks off of carbon. And you may be asking yourself, well, what is he doing on this panel? I also bring some other context where I'm still very involved with a company that I started years ago called City Fresh Foods, which we do a lot of public feeding, Meals on Wheels, and also Boston Public Schools, Lynn Public Schools. And I've also been involved with, as Greg mentioned, the Farming Institute, and also was one of the founding board members of the Commonwealth Kitchen. So, and also one of the, I'm the early board members of Red Tomato. So I'm getting back to my food roots tonight, which I'm really excited to be having a conversation.
Here, you hold that one.
Okay.
I'll take this one. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name's Usha Thakrar. I am the executive director of Boston Area Gleaners. Oaks is still alive and doing well, just so you know. We are a food systems organization that works at the intersection of farming, food waste, and food security. So there's this little triangle, this little Venn diagram on the slide that is sort of, that's our sweet spot. We have three major programs. We have what is the sort of origins of what Greg described, we call our food access program, where we do still work with 30 to 40 to 50 farms in the region who call us when they have surplus, and we go rally the volunteers and glean the produce, and now we bring it back to our facility in Acton, distribute to a network of about 60 to 70 food pantries from Worcester County, east and north, a little bit south more and more, but mostly east and north. We have a program called Boston Food Hub, which was started about 6 or 7 years ago, because as much as farmers are happy to donate their surplus produce, farmers are kind of in the business of feeding their families, and farming is their livelihood. And Boston Food Hub was created to connect farmers to local customers who are interested in sourcing produce. What started as kind of this nascent idea with a few boxes of what was Brussels sprouts at the time is now a thriving business that works with 50 farms, 100 and something customers, and generates about $1.5 million in revenue for farms across the state. And then a few years ago, we used to occupy small amount of space, Stacey will tell you, at the Waltham Fields. And we outgrew that space. We bought a farm in Acton. I have Acton people in the back representing. It was a family-owned farm, 50 acres, that was put under preservation. And we also now farm, which is very challenging. Everything we grow at Stonefield Farm is either for the Greater Boston Food Bank or for our network of food access partners. And so we do a lot of work in rescuing surplus off of farms. We've extended that, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, to rescuing surplus at the wholesale level, because there's a lot of waste at that level as well. So.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeff Lemberg, and I'm the executive director of the Newton Food Pantry. The Newton Food Pantry is the largest nonprofit hunger relief organization dedicated specifically to Newton residents in need. So we serve more than 2,500 Newton residents who are in need of supplemental food assistance. That's more than 1,000 unique households. We do have refrigeration now. So 18 years ago, there was not. We do have a robust, and we really lean heavily into fresh and healthy foods. And so we are fortunate to have partnerships like with New Community Farm, but we also buy quite a bit local through wholesale produce vendors out of Chelsea and the Greater Boston Food Bank, we're a member agency. The people that we serve are incredibly diverse. So I live in Newton as well, and so I've lived here for 15 years. My kids are in Newton Public Schools. And of the people that we serve, we're talking seniors who are on minimal fixed incomes. We're talking young families struggling to make ends meet. We're talking about people who might have fallen on hard times, and just a range of other people. 60% of our clients speak a language other than English at home, and about a third of our clients are seniors, and about 25 are kids. And so the need is huge, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And one of the things that we are constantly working on is how do we improve our capacity to meet all the need that exists. Newton is a very large community. Obviously, 90,000 people live here. It's the 11th largest city in Massachusetts. And so there is a lot of folks who are in need. So numbers ballpark 5,000 plus people. So we're hitting half of it, and we're doing incredible work. Some of our volunteers are here, and there's a staff of only 5 of us, but we are powered by over 130 different volunteers who every week give their time and talent to help us. And we also operate, how many people know about the Frege? That's good. Yeah. So we also operate the Newton Community Frege in Nonantum, and I can talk about that a little bit later as well. So thank you for having me.
Hopefully most of you know about Newton Community Farm, but having done this for 19 years, I know there are still a lot of people, even in our own community, who don't. So I will just briefly talk to you about Newton Community Farm. We were founded in 2006 when the city of Newton purchased the last remaining farm in the city of Newton, and it was turned over to Newton Community Farm Inc. to operate as an educational nonprofit. We operate the farming aspect of it as much as we can as a commercial farm, because what we want to do is teach sustainable agriculture, and it doesn't matter how great your soil practices are or your plant health is. If you can't make your budget and you go out of business, then your farm becomes condos. So we wanted to have a very real approach to farming, so that when we teach people about it, we're teaching them as something that actually makes business sense. In addition to running the farm, we run educational programs. So we have a high school internship program. We have students from Newton, as well as a lot of the surrounding communities every summer, who come for 2 4-week sessions and learn about how food is grown, and we explore the questions about climate change and how it impacts agriculture. We explore the greater industrial food complex in which we all exist, and the pros and cons of that. We do programming for youth and adults. We have a seedling sale, as Paul mentioned, which is a great mission-driven event for us, because it allows us to provide very healthy, beautiful, organically grown seedlings to Newton residents, well, anybody who wants to come, and grow their own food in their yard, so they don't have to go buy things from box stores that are sprayed with precision pesticides and herbicides. And we are preserving a piece of Newton's history and a piece of Massachusetts history. This is the last working farm in an area that was once almost entirely agricultural. And then the last thing we do is it's just a beautiful space. We have a favorite volunteer who refers to it as a place of healing. She comes there because she has some chronic issues and health issues, and finds that just the I don't know what it is, being there, being around the growing plants and the beauty of the farm, she finds very serene and restorative. So we do lots of this stuff. We're much smaller than any of these other organizations, but we try and do more than our size would indicate.
Thank you. So there are a lot of challenges that we're facing today, and so we're going to talk about challenges, opportunities, and then hope. And some of the significant challenges your organization might face, Jeff, you alluded to this a little bit, so I'm going to put you on the spot. You're talking about the amount of people, that there was a gap in the amount of people you can serve. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you see when you're trying to feed the community and how that works? And, yeah.
So I think space and understanding are the 2 biggest challenges. So when you think about a food pantry, the biggest challenge isn't food, ironically, it's space. Where do you put it? So if you have the opportunity to get bulk supply from something, so we're able to get a pallet of rice, let's say, from the Greater Boston Food Bank, we need a place to put the pallet of rice. And so, the City of Newton has been really generous to us, and for the last 8 years, we've operated out of the basement of Newton City Hall, and it's 1,300 square feet, small. We make a lot, out of every corner. We have a little outdoor refrigerated pod, and so it's, you have to travel a labyrinth to get from pod back into the pantry, but that's okay. But we're limited in what we can do. And so I think that's just one point. And we do have a solution for that, so I'll say that for later. So it's something to get you excited about. Understanding is that every dollar that we spend to feed people is money that we have to raise. So we are getting our money through individual donations, corporate gifts, and foundations, in that order, really. And there's a perception, fair, that Newton is a city where people do relatively well. And so it's hard to kind of break through that sometimes to get people to understand that we have need, and there's people who are struggling mightily. And so I think, the ability to serve more people, obviously comes with any nonprofit organization needing the resources to do that. And so, that's part of my job, is to help educate folks and, appreciate this opportunity as well to be able to talk about the need that exists in the city, and how much we rely on the community to help support what we do, because we couldn't do it without the city. We spend well over $500,000 a year purchasing food and personal care items for clients. The Newton Food Pantry is set up like a small grocery store. We're a choice pantry, which means people can walk through and select for themselves the foods that they and their families need and want. There's dignity in choice, and we really lean heavily into that. And so it's based on an equity model. Household size informs how much of any particular item you can have. So household of 1 or 2, you might be able to get 4 apples. Larger household, 7 or 8 apples. So we work really hard to be able to provide everybody what they need, but we know there's limitations, both in terms of space and obviously resources. And so we have a plan for that one too. But that's to answer the broader question.
I'm wondering if you can, there's a lot of misperception sometimes about how food pantries operate and how people how you get your food, etc. If you can just speak to that really quickly.
Yeah, so we are a member agency of the Greater Boston Food Bank, incredible organization. Greater Boston Food Bank gets funding from a few different places. Some of it's state, some of it they get through USDA foods. They have a whole fundraising apparatus. They get a whole bunch of donations, etc. So there's a chunk of things, largely non-perishable items, that we're able to get through the Greater Boston Food Bank for free, which is lovely. There's some fruit and vegetables that we're able to get from them for free. It's usually root vegetables and things like that. And then we're spending quite a bit through a wholesale produce vendor out of Chelsea named J.W. Lopes. They do great work. And then come spring, summer, and early fall, we're able to get the donations from Newton Community Farm. Land's Sake Farm in Weston generously supports us. And some of the other area farms that are at Cold Springs Park farmers markets, we will go around hat in hand on Tuesday nights and do that as well. And so, we're really set up in this just beautiful produce. Our clients are just so appreciative of what it is, because again, we really prioritize, healthy, fresh, dietarily appropriate, culturally relevant foods for our clients, and that costs money. It costs more, obviously, as we all know, to buy fresh produce than it is to buy processed. So we really want to do as much as we can to help both, healthy aging for our seniors, as well as healthy development for the children and everybody in between.
Great, thank you. Greg, and so Jeff talked a lot about getting healthy produce and local produce. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges to get the local produce to Jeff? What you guys go through in order to get that to Jeff?
Sure.
And to others, obviously.
Yeah, I think there's a number of challenges. We do have some farms in our community that are nonprofit farms that are 100% dedicated to food access. So they don't sell anything they grow. So Gaining Ground in Concord, Needham Community Farm, They don't sell anything. Everything they grow is donated, but that means that 100% of their budget has to be fundraised. That's a big task for a small nonprofit farm to do. So for a farm like ours, one of our big challenges is trying to balance having a sustainable budget with being able to donate as much as we possibly can to the food pantry. We have to sell produce in order to make our budget work, which means that we can't give as much as we would like to, but that's a big challenge. And that's a challenge not just for Newton Community Farm, but as Usha alluded to earlier, that's a challenge for all farms, right? I, probably like 15, 12 years ago, was on a panel at MIT put on by the Greenhorns, which is an organization for young farmers. And there were a number of farmers on the stage with me, and someone in the audience was like, "You just sell expensive organic vegetables to rich yuppies in Newton." And I was like, what should I be doing? She's like, "You should be giving it away, you should be selling it really cheap, blah, blah." And I was like, I was kind of taken aback because most of the farmers that I've known in my life are some of the lowest wage workers around, right? Agricultural workers are on SNAP, they're on social health care, right? They are the working poor, and yet almost every farm I know donates produce to food pantries. And I think that that's just because that's the kind of people who go into it, and because people who go into farming recognize that farming, unlike most things, farming is a primary industry, right? We are primary producers, and what we make is required by everyone, and it should in some ways be a right? Everyone should have a right to get food. So overcoming that idea that farms should solve a huge social problem is a big challenge. And then there are programs to help farms. Like a lot of farms have benefited greatly from the state's HIP program, which is a supplemental program to SNAP, which is the federal food aid program. And the HIP program really was meant to, one of its intentions was to drive SNAP dollars to local agriculture. And it worked really well. But the whole SNAP system isn't actually really set up for farms. It's set up for grocery stores. And it's really not very easy for small farms to use SNAP. Most of our clients, like most of Jeff's clients who are using SNAP, are not English language natives, English-speaking natives, and they don't necessarily understand their own benefits or how their benefits work, and there's not a lot of support for them, and they come to farmers who are being asked to provide that support, which is really challenging. So it's hard when like the big state and federal programs that are set up to help farmers provide food are not really set up more for farmers so much as they are set up for grocery stores and retailers. And then climate change is a huge problem for farmers trying to provide, as climate change becomes more and more extreme, the margins of an already small, slim margin industry are tightening, and it makes it harder to have that excess produce to donate when you're already struggling because you're facing the cost of climate change.
Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about the HIP program in a bit, the Healthy Incentives Programs, because that's going to be one of our asks. But I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. You alluded to the fact that local food is more expensive. Can you just explain a little bit why we have a higher cost of local food than, if you go into the grocery store?
Well, I'm not an agricultural economist.
I kind of just threw that at you. In your experience, how about that?
Yeah. So we used to have a local restaurant who would come to the farm, and he'd see our leeks in the field at the end of the season, and he'd be like, "I want to buy your leeks," and I'd be like, "Well, no, they're we're not selling them." And he's like, "No, I want I can see them all. I want to buy them all." I'd be like, "How much are you going to pay me?" And he would quote me a price that he got from Restaurant Depot.
Yeah.
That's the price you want to pay. And I was like, I can't even afford to pick them for that price.
Right.
So, part of the difference in price is cost of land, cost of labor, the cost of housing for our labor, right? We are living in one of the highest cost of living states in the entire nation, And we're trying to pay our workers a wage they can afford to live here on, and we aren't really doing a great job of it. And even with not being able to pay them as much as we should be, we're still having to charge more than you're going to go and get produce for somewhere at like a grocery store or a Home Depot or not Home Depot, but Costco. Some of this is also economies of scale, right? Like clearly, even the very biggest farms in Western Mass are not operating at remotely the scale of big farms in California, and that there's just an economic reality to that.
Yeah. And another reality that you mentioned, but I'm going to kick this to Usha, is about climate change. So we have droughts and we're having a lot of flooding and just extreme weather generally. Can you talk about how climate change has affected your work or other farming work that you've seen in your time?
Climate change, farming is weather dependent. Farming is all about, remember just today, like it's been really nice and dry, and as soon as we start getting into, like, I feel like the floodgates are going to open in a couple of weeks, right? It's been a lovely farming spring the last few weeks to really get plants in the ground. 2 years ago, summer 2023, right, was the wettest. So we bought a farm in 2021. The year we bought a farm in 2021, it was the wettest year ever. The next year was the driest year ever. The year after that was the wettest year ever. Last year was a perfect farming season. Anyone want to guess what it's going to be this year? It's just, the fluctuations are tremendous. Farmers can't really pivot quickly to be like, oh no, it's wet, I'm going to plant rice. I'm making that up. But actually, one of the farmers we know is going to plant rice. The climate mitigation strategies, there's greenhouse growing, there's other things that but those are expensive. Running a farm, as Greg is pointing out, is expensive. The wildfires in California affected the supply of fresh produce coming out of California last year. The wildfires in Canada affected the price of wood that people use to build deer fencing, and so there was more deer, the ripple effect of any individual part of the climate that is being damaged affects food production because it's such an integrated and synergistic system. So yes, farmers are trying things. We are growing tomatoes in a greenhouse because you can control the water, and you can, that's, most conventional farming is not designed to be able to just, so. We will see, I think, right this minute, at this moment in our country's history, the supply chain disruptions that we are seeing in the food supply chain have more to do with things that are happening at the federal level than climate right now. But things that are happening at the federal level are going to affect climate, and so it's just like a thing.
Great. So we're going to actually move on to opportunities that we've talked about space, lack of space. We've talked about climate change. We talked about funding. So I feel, Glynn, you are a visionary.
No pressure.
I feel like the things that I know, the Urban Farming Institute is an amazing property, and the work that's being done there is great, and some of the other things that you've built are pretty impressive. So could you talk a little bit about what you see as some of the opportunities for feeding our community are currently, and what you're seeing kind of on the horizon?
Sure. So I'm going to do it in some stories. And my first story is one of the origin stories of the Urban Farming Institute is this guy here way to my left, Greg Maslowe. And I was younger and I was more idealistic back then. And I said, no, on a small scale, you can actually do intensive production where I think folks could actually make a little money on it. And there was some interesting debates because Greg had obviously a lot more experience around what it really took to farm. But my family, I had a cousin that lived on Howland Street in Roxbury, called the H Block. And I noticed all these all this open space, and this is back about 15 years ago. And it says, it's sitting, it's idle. Can we get folks on this land producing food? And at the time, we were, buying a whole bunch of produce, including lettuce from California. And so that doesn't make sense. And so anyway, the first part of the story was we got some land behind Sportsman's Tennis Club and converted it into a farm. And I want to say I was proud that I think we made about $20,000 on a quarter acre in 1 year. And how did we do that? Selling it to the highest bidder, these high-end restaurants. And I remember we had the rows of the lettuce, the 5 different varieties, and you had 5 cycles you can cut them. And my whole thing is well, at least we're paying the farmer something. But I'll say I evolved over time to realize it's more about more of us growing food for ourselves, right? This difference between, I guess, food security and food sovereignty. I'm over the years I've tried to figure out how do we just all more of us get our hands in the soil. And I'm actually curious, how many people in this room are growing food, in their backyard, or look at that. So that's what I'm talking about. This is a representation in my world, in my estimate about food sovereignty. I'll fast forward to the story where I have daughters at the spectrum. So my oldest is 20, and my youngest, wait for it, is 8. And urban dwellers. And my folks had a relationship with this woman in New Hampshire who was sitting on 10 acres of land. And when I was in high school, my father said, I think we're going to buy her property because she's selling. I said, that's great. And so we bought this home with 10 acres of land on it. And I went up there as a young kid to New Hampshire, this particular area in Loudon. And then we obviously, once we owned the house, we'd get there more frequent. Fast forward, my dad turns 80, and he's like, yeah, I think it's time to sell, maintain an old house and all that stuff. I says, no, I think we want to keep this land in the family. And the long of the story was we decided to bring in a group of other folks out of the Boston area to co-own this home and reopen and get this farm going. So I didn't say that in my intro. I also am doing some farming, but not like Greg, and not I call it, how do we make it more of a hybrid experience where you don't have to make a living off it, but maybe it can feed my family, feed the families that got involved. So the image I want to leave with you is I have my 8-year-old now who gives the farm tours. The last couple of years we had a variety of 30 vegetables. We go from greens all the way to brassicas, all the way to the root crops, and she's the one that knows the bugs and so on. So to me, it's like an amazing experience. Like she's there she is squashing the tomato worms, the worms that eat the tomatoes. So I just say that I actually think that we need to reimagine our local food system on multiple. It's a complex system, but on multiple levels. And one thing that I tell the story is, I would go up on Wednesdays, and that would be my farm day during the week. And then on the weekend, my wife and I did a lot of heavy lifting on this farm. But I'll admit, my phone works on the field, so I'm taking calls, and I'm working, and I'm in heaven. And people would say, Glynn, are you on the farm? Because I wasn't I could focus on the conversation. There's no distraction, and I'm in multiple screens. And I actually think there's something where there's a hybrid where more of us can get back to the land in a meaningful way that makes sense for us. We can feed ourselves and feed our neighbors, because a lot of that food that we produced went back to the community, it went back to us. And I'll end with this. In terms of the Urban Farming Institute, the evolution of that program, because again, 12 years ago, we were doing this intensive growing to figure out if we can create employment. And what it's evolved in is what your hands represent. Can more folks in their backyard, on the vacant lawn next to you, on the porch, just get some seeds going, and they're growing more food for themselves. And I'll also I'll end with another component, which is we have other infrastructure and assets to move food out. And so on the other side is what I call public feeding. And so maybe it's another question that will come. But we feed a lot of people from a commissary kitchen, and we also try to move as much of our input from local and fresh. So there's all different levels of how we can be feeding ourselves.
Thank you. I love the reimagining our local food system, and Usha, I think you're doing a lot of that at Boston area Gleaners. I know that you guys started as gleaning, but the food hub model that you guys are working on and developing has really transformed a lot of the farms around here. I hear all sorts of great things about you guys all the time. Our work interacts a lot. So could you speak a little bit to that and explain what's been happening, et cetera, and what you've seen?
Sure. I mentioned this a little bit in my intro, but about 6 or 7 years ago, before my time, people smarter than me, who still work for us, which is great. Imagine we're out gleaning one day and gleaned some. The way the story goes, this may be fiction, but anyway, the way the story goes is they were out gleaning one day and they were gleaning some beautiful Brussels sprouts and had stopped at the end of the day and had gone to Clover, which has a very famous Brussels sprout sandwich, and that's what they were craving. And they walked in and they said, "We would like the Brussels sprout sandwich." And Clover was out of Brussels sprouts, and they were talking to the guy behind it, like, "We can't source Brussels sprouts to save our lives." And they're like, and it was sort of this nascent idea of something is broken between the farmer who has beautiful Brussels sprouts that they would prefer to sell, and this customer who needs beautiful Brussels sprouts but somehow can't make that connection. So what is now the Boston Food Hub was born out of that. Could our organization, which works with farmers and works with organizations at the other end, it's people who eat, and has resources, trucks, and people, can we help connect those dots? So in the intervening, now 7 years, we've developed a full-on business model around this, where we have a food hub director who works with local farmers, particularly to help them move things they have in surplus, that they're going to end up either is going to waste or donating because they are unable to find markets. She then has a list of 100 customers, and there's a weekly list that goes out and says, here's what's available right now. As a nonprofit, we focus, because our mission is around supporting those farmers and farmer viability, the farmer gets full price. Whatever the farmer is charging is what is charged to the customer. There's no markup on our end. And that's really how we maintain that price transparency, and we're creating, that's back to the question of why is local so expensive, is there, if there is a middleman and a middleman and a middleman, there's markup all along the way, right? This is, the farmer is getting their whole price back to them, and that is really helping their bottom line. We do a little bit of charging to the customer end to support our trucks going and getting product and bringing it to the other end of the universe. We definitely have farmers we work with who have said to us that being able to sell through this pathway has made a difference in their profitability, their viability. This is a program that has scaled significantly in the 5 or 6 years, especially since we moved to Stonefield, because it requires a fair bit of infrastructure, and we have a fair bit of infrastructure these days.
Great, thank you. So we talked a little bit about accessing food, raw produce, etc. And Glynn, you alluded to this a little bit, so I'm going to jump back to you about feeding the community. Can you talk about ways, like innovative ways, opportunities you see, and actually, we can get the produce from the farm. How do we actually feed the community then? And then Jeff, I'm going to have you piggyback off of Glynn as well. Just give me a heads up.
Yeah, I was breaking into a little bit with my experience at City Fresh. We I was asking my new CEO there. I said, what's the current price that, because it's been a while since I've been in the operations, that we get for the Boston Public School, and it's somewhere around $5, right? That's all in for 2 ounces of protein, starch, vegetable, packaged with a milk, and a dessert, delivered, right? And so figure how you make that work, right? Well, we make it work with volume, and we make it work on very low margin. But And I'll be honest, you know, the company grew pretty substantially over the last couple of years, and we part of the growth was the Boston Public School contract actually, and you know, feeding 15,000-20,000 kids a day, and what happened was we started buying more processed foods, right? Because it's easy to handle. Sometimes the price points, it's similar to farming, right? It becomes cheaper. And so what we've been trying to do is try to figure out how do you break that, how do you reimagine, how do you break that cycle? And one way is to what I call, you know, think about peasant food, like how do you bring ingredients together that you know, you mix the starch with the meat with the vegetable all in one, like the rice and beans, and you throw some chicken or your fish in there, and you make it, you know, obviously, you know, you're flavoring it so the profiles make sense. And so we have this unique ability from a commissary kitchen point of view is to kind of mass produce healthier food and get it out to folks. So I think there's an economy of scale and there's efficiency with these price points. Once you get past all the regulations and all this other stuff that you have to deal with. But I think, and we chatted on our prep call, that I think what's happening is, we said earlier, we don't know what's about to happen. You know, things we get are pretty intense in it for our communities, and I think we need to really be thinking about more like mutual aid. How, you know, and what's our infrastructure to be able to do that? And so, you know, again, we have there's a kitchen called Future Chefs on Blue Hill Avenue, which they do training for folks to try to, you know, to become in the restaurant business and so on and so forth for our young people. And so we're in conversation with the new leadership there around, is there an opportunity to leverage this beautiful kitchen that just was produced a year or so ago to produce food folks could come and do a sliding scale where we're able to, again, take, you know, different options from gleaning, from the farm, you know, purchasing in bulk, what we learned from the, you know, from the pantry system, and produce prepared food for folks, you know, as a next level. So again, these are some of the thoughts that percolate.
Great. And I'm going to kick it to Jeff. So we're talking about what are opportunities you see in feeding the community. You talked a little bit about how you are able to get food, but maybe you've thought beyond that. You know, are there any opportunities out there?
So I left a cliffhanger before when I said space, and so the payoff, you can tell you're in the edge of your seats. The payoff is we are building a brand new pantry. So we are building the first ever standalone food pantry in the city of Newton. And so this is going to be located on Rumford Ave, right next to the recycling center on Rumford. I mentioned we're 1,300 square feet now in the bowels of City Hall. We're going to be 5,000 square feet, so we're more than triple our operational footprint. We're going to have walk-in freezer, walk-in refrigerator, a chilled produce room, storage up the wazoo. And because we're going to have the space, we're also going to be able to do some wraparound services. So, you know, we have a conference room, we have a staff of 5, but we'll have a conference room that we can use as a community collaboration room. And we can bring in partners to help with getting even more of our clients registered for SNAP benefits and WIC and HIP. We can bring in partners to help with financial literacy education and programming. We can bring in our partners through Newton Wellesley and do wellness screenings and checks. And there's just so much more that we can do. So we're really excited about what we can do with the space front. You know, we are hoping, knock on wood, to break ground in another month or so, and hopefully opening up in early spring-ish 2026. So we're thrilled about that, and we have the opportunity to to think about different ways in which we can help serve folks. So. And so we're actually, because we have this building, you know, we're going through a strategic planning process with my board of directors, my staff, about how do we want to think about how best to serve and what are the different models of service that we can do. And so right now, as I mentioned, we're a choice shopping pantry. People come in and it's like a small grocery store and free, obviously. But maybe we do some pre-packed bags for people who just want to move quickly. Maybe because there's a number of folks, assisted living complexes where there's older adults who don't drive. Well, we'll have a parking lot for the first time ever, and so maybe we're able to invest in a food truck or a mobile market and bring the mountain to the people. Maybe we'll be able to have chilled lockers, kind of a la Amazon, where people could put in their orders and at a time that works for them, they can come in. And so space gives you opportunity, and so we're thrilled about that, and we're really still working through it, and we're still working through funding and all that, but we're extremely excited because ultimately the goal is, how do we end food insecurity in Newton? That's the moonshot. And so, we're currently doing a lot of different things. We help operate food pantries at a few different colleges, so LaSalle University and William James. We have the Fridge over in Nonantum. We have our main operation here. And the 2,500 people that we currently serve through our main pantry, that's only on Wednesdays from 12 to 7 and Thursdays from 10 to 1. That's it, because that's what the city allows us to do as per our lease. So we'll be able to be open more days, more hours, and really think about different ways that we can accommodate the unique needs of the residents so that we can try to reach everybody who needs our help.
Great, thank you. So we've talked about challenges, we've talked about opportunities, and I think it's important for us to hear action steps that we can actually do on our own so we can maybe feel better about what's happening. So you want to start, and we're going to go all the way down. Just some action step that you suggest for people to be able to move forward about food systems and or Newton.
So I have a friend, Apollo Catalan, from the Urban Farming Institute, who has a farm on Ballou Street, and he was talking about how, like, if you look around Ballou Street, there are like an immense number of people living in apartments and triple deckers who are all on SNAP benefits and have no access to fresh local produce because there isn't any in that community, and there isn't enough space to grow it in that community. And that if you could just connect the farms and get them to bring the food in there, there's a huge opportunity for those farms. And so one of the things you can do is you can advocate if you're part of another organization. The Food Project just did this. So another guy, Saeed from Nubia, Saeed just got an acre of land on the Food Project's farm in Lincoln, and that food is all going back into Boston. And it's all going to people who are on SNAP benefits and HIP benefits. So it would be great if other organizations, right now it's really sad because a lot of organizations like the Trustees and Mass Audubon are shutting farms down. And if you're part of those organizations, advocate that they keep those farms open, or they lease those farms to people who want to be providing produce to the local community. But it would be terrible if those organizations just shut those farms down for good and they are no longer farms.
So my pitch is, we were told not to get too political, so I won't get political, but I would say there are times where I feel pretty despondent about kind of what's happening. And I'm fortunate to have a job where every day I'm giving back, I'm helping people, it's tangible. And so my pitch is, you can do that too. So the Newton Food Pantry, we have over 130 volunteers, some of them are here today, helping out in all sorts of ways. So we have folks who are coming in Monday morning to help with unloading what we get from the Greater Boston Food Bank. So it's a little nice early morning workout. During Tuesdays, we have pre-bagging for our home deliveries. So we do home deliveries for medically homebound individuals. And we have relationships with school counselors where they will refer, so we do home deliveries for that. Wednesdays, we're open from setting up really early, getting everything done, and we're serving from again from 12 to 7. We have volunteers constantly helping, stocking shelves, working with clients, fetching carts, runs the gamut. Thursday, same thing. Friday, we rest. But there's an incredible opportunity to kind of fill your bucket, and you actually could get involved in different ways. So you can check us out, newtonfoodpantry.org, and there's always different opportunities, and we would love the help. And as we grow, we're certainly going to need the help more. I can't keep hiring people, so we're going to need more people to give their time and talent, and it's a good time to do it.
So I'm going to go back to the beginning when I talked about my little Venn diagram and the 3 areas. I'm going to give 3 different things to think about. So my side hustle, as my colleagues at work like to call it, is I help run the food pantry in the town in which I live. It's all volunteer food pantry, no staff. And I'm going to second this one. Volunteer at this one or other ones if you don't live in food pantries in every community need volunteers, and they're the backbone for the staffed ones and the unstaffed ones. So that's my food security pitch. My farming pitch is support your local farmer. Bypass Whole Foods. As much as you can, buy your fresh produce, your cheese, your dairy, your meat at a farmer's market, sign up for CSA. A couple of years ago with the floods, people asked us, like, how can we help the farming community? It's like, keep buying from them. This is what they do for a living. So support your local farmer, whether that's Newton Community Farm or, again, any other farm that you live near. And then I have to make my food waste pitch. Buy the right amount of food from your local farmer, not more food than you need, so that you don't end up throwing it away. Food waste is the largest generator of methane in municipal landfills, and methane is worse than CO2 in ways that we can't even talk about. So I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it's back to like the things you can do in your day-to-day and moment-to-moment lives are all of those things.
Ditto. Yeah, I think this is the Newton community, I think, right? And so I think for the Newton community, continue to grow food, right? And also bring the next generation into it, right? Your sons, your daughters, your nephews, your nieces, your grandsons. I actually think putting your hands in the soil is one of the biggest antidotes to the screen obsession that a lot of our kids have. And then I would also say, Greg, I love that you referenced Saeed and Apollo. As you look at other communities that you may not be, living in, look, listen, and figure how you can be, you could best add value. And I would say, from my personal experience, ownership matters, right? Who owns the process? Who owns the land? Who owns the assets? You want to be supporting those folks deeply and really from behind, I'd say. And one thing I did at City Fresh, it was one of my dreams, and I'm really proud of this, is we opened up so that the employees could own the company. And so we formed an employee stock purchase plan, which now about 60% of our company is owned by the employees. And so I think that so hopefully the legacy of that will be a community-run organization for years to come. So I would promote that type of approach when you think about working with other communities.
And my pitch is to call your legislators. You have the power, you have the story. Call your Massachusetts legislator, call your local legislator. They actually do want to hear from you. They represent you. They want to hear from you. We run the Campaign for Healthy Incentives program, which is the HIP program. In December of 2024, DTA, because of funding, cut HIP to $20 per SNAP recipient. Families used to get $40, $60, or $80, depending on the family. Now they only get $20. It's not enough for them to go to farmers markets. It's not enough for them to go buy the lovely produce that they're growing. Farmers are going out of business because of this. And so we have been advocating to try to get it back up to level funding. So $25 million in the House Ways and Means budget. I know this is like policy wonk, but call your legislator and ask them to fund HIP fully. That's all I have to say. They want to hear from you. They too want to fund HIP fully. So they will agree with you when you call them. So thank you. So there is time for, I left 20 minutes for questions, so. I appreciate that.
Pink sweater.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It seems like there's so much more opportunity in this country and in this area for edible landscaping, for people to grow food. I mean, you look at the history of the Victory Gardens back, during the war, and people grew so much more food. There's just between community gardens and people's and land. I mean, in Newton, there's a lot of land, just individual homeowner land where people could grow food.
I'm just wondering what you think about that idea of finding some way to promote that, either through schools, education, incentives, I don't know what else. I know, for example, in Arizona, that they have backyard gleaning programs because there's a lot of edible landscaping, and those get coordinated through AmeriCorps grants and other programs that are funded to hire the staff. But just, again, it seems like it's an opportunity here that we're kind of missing.
Is that me? Yeah, so you. Here, all right. I think it starts with you. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, no, I grew up in the suburbs, and I actually used to be a landscaper. I don't know if you know that. So it's unbelievable. Camelon, it's crazy, right? And the kids would be playing with it, and and that whole system where then you put this nitrogen down, you got to water it more. I'm a big believer of, again, it's the reimagining and taking risk. I mean, people have, is it going to reduce the value of the property if it doesn't look like the neighbor and all that stuff? I think it's time to break away. So I can tell you, we finally put a box garden around, and I have a little postage stamp in Roxbury, but we got a little sun on it, and we're growing a bunch of stuff out of that, about 8x4 raised bed garden. So. Yeah, so I would say I think most of the people raise their hands here. So folks are doing it on some level, and I would I don't know, street organizing, right? Talk to your neighbors. I mean, we all have the power here, right? To motivate, right? Maybe we set a goal right now. We're gonna increase edible gardening on my street by 10% next year. What do you say? Huh? All right, let's do it.
This is a project that is run. The Urban Farming Institute does this. There's a number of organizations in Boston that install raised bed gardens. They're doing raised beds because a lot of the soil there has lead toxicity. But it's a subsidized program, so the beds go in really cheaply, and they'll work with you. We've worked with both high schools, 2 of the middle schools, and a big chunk of the elementary schools to put in gardens in Newton Public Schools. The problem there is that that's not part of the public school curriculum, right? And maybe with MCAS laws changing, that'll change, but because it's not part of the curriculum, it's up to individual teachers, and when that teacher leaves, so goes the garden. We're doing one next week with Service Stars, a volunteer organization for youth here in Newton. But our seedling sale, I often say, like, our seedling sale, the goal of our seedling sale is to put Newton Community Farm out of business, right? People should be able to grow enough vegetables in their yard that they don't really need vegetable farms in Newton. And just as a little teaser, one of the programs we're developing, we're developing an edible tour of Newton Community Farm. This is not focused on the crops that we grow. We'll talk about the crops we grow, but this is looking at all the other things. The things that you don't have to have a Norway maple, and you don't have to have an azalea and a rhododendron. You can have blueberries and raspberries and peach trees and apple trees and plum trees. So we do a tour of this with our high school students. They love it. We talk about anywhere between 30 and 40 edible plants that we're growing there that are just purely ornamental edible crops. And so hopefully that program will be online this summer.
And just to close it up with some advocacy again, the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative, we've been advocating for having the standards change in Massachusetts, so food literacy is actually taught in school, because right now it is a problem. Champions leave, and it's not equitably distributed throughout Massachusetts. So we've been working with the Department of Education, elementary and secondary education, to try to figure out how to put food literacy within the standards. And the second thing is, I was talking earlier to one of the board members about food forests. Food forest is a really interesting concept. It's where you build edible areas, like on parks, etc. But the purpose is for anyone to go in and eat anything. And so there's one in Edgewater in Mattapan, which is beautiful. That's the only one I've been to, but it is a really interesting concept. So I recommend looking that one up as well.
Don't worry.
Jeff, I was wondering, you're not the only one that's looking for space. Greg would love to have some housing for his farmers, affordable housing. The Charles River Food Co-op is coming up and looking for space to create. And I was wondering if there's, when you're building something from scratch, whether it might be interesting to see if you could collaborate with some of these organizations. I know there's a co-op, I saw somewhere that, you know, they had on the ground floor, they had the co-op, but then upstairs they had 2-floor housing. I don't know if it's something that has crossed your mind.
So we originally did think, oh, we could do something bigger and having multiple floors. And the idea was there's other social service organizations in Newton that we could lease out to the second floor and kind of have it as a hub. Economics are what they are, and so we just couldn't afford to do it. You build a second floor, you have to have an elevator in the building, you have to do all this. And so we're able to do what we're able to do, and so it's that was the dream. And I've early on in the process was asking my architect of, like, if I want to put a second floor on later, could I? And apparently that's not how buildings work. So I'm getting an education on building a building. So yeah, I mean, I take the point for that. It's hard to come by. We were fortunate. The space was supposed to be a marijuana dispensary, and the group that was going to do it, I guess, realized that Newton was awash in weed, and they decided maybe it's not a best business idea at the time. And so they backed out, and the developer is a Brookline guy, just reached out and it was like, I want to make a donation. And when I get those calls, I don't know if they mean like they want to give a couple $100, they want to give me a can of tuna, like what do they want? And so it was it was a nice call, and we were just really fortunate that this really generous person decided to donate the land to us, and so was able to we've worked really hard at the Pantry to raise the funds necessary to do this build. We're not fully there finished, but we can build this building. And so yeah, it's sometimes just good luck. It is kind of what it's called for. So I can't take too much credit on that one.
Other questions?
I actually have 2 questions. One is for Greg. It's about the farm dinners that you used to have at the community farm, and they were fantastic, and I hope that they raised money as well for the farm. Are you ever going to bring those back?
I think it was actually COVID that put an end to the farm dinners.
And COVID now being over, I mean.
Yeah. So interestingly, if you talk to fundraisers, professional fundraisers, events are not good fundraisers. They tend to, I mean, if there's a big like pitch at the end, it can work, but like the dinners themselves, we made money doing them for sure, but it was not a super lucrative, particularly given the amount of work it is for a small staff.
Volunteers.
I think more importantly, though, than raising money is just the building of community, and I really enjoyed those, and I hope we haven't, we have this beautiful new greenhouse that I keep thinking, oh, it'd be really fun to have it in the greenhouse, and we can clear the benches out, so we'll see.
I definitely think that the direct dollars that you get for the event, while they were positive, they meant it have been amazing, but the community that it creates actually does deepen your donor pool over time.
Very much, yes.
So I would argue for that. My second question was about the Frege. I have a friend who moved down to the Philadelphia area recently, and she posts on Facebook every day the food that she's preparing and donating to her local Frege. So I looked into it, and Newton, being what it is, full of rules and regulations, doesn't allow home cooks to do that. And I'm wondering why that is and how we can change that so that people who can donate a skill and a passion for cooking and help the community and feed people can be enabled to do that. And if it's not in Newton, maybe someone else on the panel can say, oh, there's a place nearby where folks like me who want to do that could do it.
Yeah, thank you for giving a shout out to the Fridge. I wear a lot of hats in my job, and so not only do I raise all the money and run kind of operations, but like the door in the Fridge was broken. Somebody like texted me today, so I'm there with my toolkit fixing a door. So I was just down there, and yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is there's just health permitting requirements and food safety handling requirements, and yes, there's a lot of requirements in Newton, so I can't really speak to exactly the what there, but just as an overview for what the Fridge is, for those who aren't super familiar with it, so it's a 24/7 publicly accessible refrigerator and pantry, dry pantry. We provide produce, so from the end of our service week, kind of bag it all up and spread it out, and so nothing goes to waste for us, and so all of that produce goes down to the Fridge, spaced out over multiple days. In addition, there's about 30 different organizations, businesses that donate. So restaurants, grocery stores, bakeries do this. And so we have just a small army of volunteers who will go pick up these donations. So everything from Stone Lovin' to Thistle and Leek to Barmore to et cetera, so like 30 different groups. And then in addition to that, you have the everyday resident who is, going to the supermarket and picking up a few extra things of whatever and running it over. And so it's been, a nice project for those who have young kids to get involved and other things. So it really is this incredible kind of community thing. For some people don't want to come to a food pantry for, various reasons. So they have a bit more privacy this way, where they can go by and pick up what they need. I'm there pretty regularly dealing with whatever, and I'll chat with folks. And if you live in Newton, I'm encouraging you to come to the Newton Food Pantry and get so much more. And I always say, like, where are you coming in from? And it's from Boston, it's from Watertown, it's from Waltham, it's from Framingham. I met somebody the other day who was coming in from like middle of like the state. I didn't even know the name of the city. And she was like, I was visiting somebody, so I just looked you up. So it's great, right? Like, they wouldn't do it if they didn't need it. And so we're really work hard to try to make it a good environment. Deb Hall, will give a shout out, who's on the board of the New Community Farm, is just, the godmother of our Fridge, and just did yeoman's work for years and years, helping keeping that going. And sustaining that, and so it really does take a community and just amazing people who give of themselves. So thank you for the intent, and I think there are ways that you can do it, but as of right now, I think the home cooked is probably not. Or yeah, you can just ship it to Philly. Yeah.
You can go right for yellow. Right here. Right here.
In regards to the guidelines for Newton, aren't those dictated by the Mass Department of Public Health? But in regards to a follow-up to her question about other towns that may not be as strict as Newton.
I'm going to defer that to somebody smarter than I am.
I'm almost sure that's right, that it's state driven and not city driven.
It just in terms of making it feel maybe just a little bit better. There's things that we can't do, that it's not just us.
I just wanted to, I wanted your passion to be acknowledged, because I think that's how, as being a farmer when I was young and getting into the culinary world, there are places you can do what you love and contribute to your community. We talked about community and where this all starts and where this all stems from, and there are organizations like Community Servings, Food Not Bombs, and Waltham. You can go, maybe not cooking from your home, but if you love to cook for others and nourish others, places like so many of our organizations donate fresh food, and there are groups of community members coming together out of that culinary love and wanting to nourish their community, and you can go, and I'm happy to chat with you sidebar, but there are places that you can go and nourish people through that passion. So keep that spark going, because there are ways you can feed your community through that way.
I'll add an addendum too, which is there's a number of folks who do farming in their own properties, and they'll swing by and bring the extra produce. And so there's this great guy who's an area professor, and he's just loves his backyard farm, and he's bringing stuff on a regular basis. And then he now volunteers in the pantry because he just jived with us. And so, yeah, I think there's other ways in too. So, yeah, thank you.
I think we have time for one more question if anyone has one.
Thanks. I've been sitting here thinking as a housing advocate in Newton about how to connect to this work you all are doing. My wife is a fabulous food person. I follow her lead. But we have the Newton Armory is going to start construction probably as soon, and in about a year there will be 43 low-income families living over there on Washington Street. And there are other projects that are bringing some more low-income folks in town who all probably need access to healthy food. So I don't know what the connection point is, but you've got a seed planting. I'll be talking to some of you. I'm on the Newton Housing Partnership, so we are advocates for this, for more housing in town. So thanks.
So I think in response to that, one of the things that has to happen is it has to be part of the planning process. To Ted's point about partnering with someone. I got a call once a couple of years ago from the president, the CEO of Hebrew Senior Life before they were building their facility in Dedham. We're building this facility in Dedham. We've got a 100-acre campus, and we want to have a farm on it. And I went down there, and he showed me around. I'm like, it's like you've developed all the farmland. Everything that was flat and arable is now housing. And he was showing me like a rock outcropping with trees on it. I was like, how about that space right there? And he's like, sorry, that's the Rashi School's soccer field. And I was like, well, what about that one? Well, that's too close to the river, we can't do. So it wasn't part of the plan. It happened too quick. And like Northland, right? Like Northland's now changing their whole development, but like they could have put in, that's a big chunk of land right there. Like there could have been a little urban farm in Northland providing produce. But it's not, like if you're in housing advocacy, you should be advocating that as part of the planning process, they're putting in community gardens or urban farms or some kind of growing spaces.
And in addition, thinking about grocery stores and markets, because that's a lot of people coming in. Housing, I think, often has tension with food systems, and so you have to kind of think about the entire food system and think about how many people you're bringing in order to make sure you do feed everybody. And people are thinking about it, yeah. And it's good that you are as well.
To your housing question, the new Parks and Recreation is building I think 60 raised beds right off of Washington Street and that's a model that you could incorporate into the space around your.
I'll let you give the closing remark.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Kristina, for guiding us this evening. That was really wonderful. And thank you to our panelists. I hope that you got a sense of the challenges that we face and the creativity that we're all approaching with it, because this is a really important issue, and there are ways to address these problems, and it just takes willpower and creativity, imagination, and funding. So, yeah, support your local food pantries, support your local farms, and as a last thing that you can do, there are CSAs out there that have sliding scales, right? So if you're in a CSA with a sliding scale CSA share, consider paying more. Then someone who can't quite afford their CSA share can get a subsidized CSA share. Yeah, there's lots of things that you can do. So thank you very much for your time this evening.